Justin, welcome to Validated.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So this is our second episode talking about the intersection of Bitcoin and the Solana universe. So, last time on the show, we talked to Threshold and Thesis about TBTC, which is sort of a bridge liquidity layer that brings wrapped Bitcoin to Ethereum and then brings that asset to Solana. But what you guys are doing at Zeus is a little bit different. You guys talk about this as the first communication layer between Bitcoin and Solana. What does that actually mean?
This is the type of question that I often get asked from people in a conference. Like, what is Zeus? Like, is Zeus layer 2? Or is Zeus layer 2 like for SVMs? Answer is no entirely. Me as a founder, I strongly disagree with fragmentation on the layer 1 perspective. First, in terms of usability for the user size, why would you want to change RPC to another new layer? But if a layer 1 of Solana is far more usable in most of the layers already. And second, but the most importantly, is liquidity fragmentations. We have experienced that for the last 2 years from Ethereum perspective, from EVNs. Layer 2 is not the solutions. There could be a temporary solution, but for the long-term sustainable solution wise, I don't think users really appreciate that. And then we start seeing the reason why Anatoly and Raj from 2 years ago saying that one layer should transact everything instead of like multiple layers on top of it. So what Zeus does, we portray ourselves as a layer 1.5, Solana as a layer 1 plus 0.5 Zeus, which would enable external assets like Litecoin, Bitcoin, Dogecoin, any UTXO chains that are not programmable. We make it programmable on Solana using SVNs on the layer 1 perspective.
Yeah, so let's get into a little bit of how that actually works. I think famously Bitcoin and these other types of assets you mentioned, they don't really have a smart contract system. There's some Taproot magic and there's maybe some BitVM sometime in the future. But, if you look at all of the existing L2s today, like the Bitcoin L2s today, they're really side chains with some sort of trust minimized bridging. Very similar to, how Polygon proof of stake has no direct security relationship to Ethereum. It is a side chain at that point versus something like an Optimism, which is actually built properly on top of the Ethereum stack. So walk me through a little bit how, like, you call this a layer 1.5. How is it differ from a classic like sidechain implementation?
Yeah, for sure. First of all, I just want to emphasize on the Bitcoin layer 2 aspect right now. We probably see more than 30, 50 plus Bitcoin layer 2 so-called coming out this year or around the end of last year that time. And a lot of, like Austin said, obviously, a lot of these layers are not correlated with Bitcoin on the layer 1 consensus.
Yeah.
More so, they're more like a sidechain perspective with their own POS mechanisms, enabling their own security rather than working interchangeably with a Bitcoin POW consensus.
Yeah.
So that, to me, they are just creating a layer, and then which is something called BVN. You are pretty much taking EVM perspective into their own layer, changing gas from Ethereum to Bitcoins. Is that helpful? I'm not sure because, every cycle, users, investors, obviously retails are changing their appetites and they know what is good for the future of Web3s. So, and then that's why, hence the reason why I started Zeus almost 14 months ago. I was in Europe. I went to a couple Bitcoin conferences and I was just like, I dived into all these technical paper on a Bitcoin layer till I realized that, hey, they're just creating their own layers.
Yeah.
And why don't we just make Solana as a layer 2 for these their POW consensus, UTXO chains out there? And we have to know that, right? Like a lot of these miners, they're looking for sustainable yield. They're not looking for crazy incentives like 10, 20% yield. Yeah, sure. I mean, it could be appealing for the first few days, but where does the yield come from, right? We have to know yield comes from users. If a protocol and an ecosystem has no dApps and users, the yields are inflationary. And most of the aspects are coming from their own native tokens. So, I still think that's largely providing the most sustainable yield right now. If you look at it in terms of on-chain activities and on-chain growth rates. And here's the reason why, a lot of people ask me if Zeus is not layer 2, you guys are layer 1.5, how does that work? Which means Zeus, all these assets are communicated over to Solana by Zeus, are safely guarded by Zeus nodes. And Zeus node is a consensus. It's a consensus of NPC models. running on top of Solana validators, which means we don't run our own validator. We have our own nodes, and the nodes empower our own consensus, which is NPC models. Every asset that are deposited into the external blockchain address are safely guarded by the node itself, which means even Zeus Foundation ourselves have no right to really take the assets, whatever you deposit and mint on a Solana side of it. So I think it's refreshing in many aspects that Zeus also get asked a lot, are you guys a bridge? First of all, like, without a bridge, we are far more interoperable, composable in a way that people can build on top of ZPL and then creating ZPL assets. And then ZPL assets is actually derived by token extensions. So we're extremely confident that with ZPL assets, especially like external assets like Bitcoin, Litecoin, Room, order nodes, it's really going to do the strong showcases of what token extension can do for the entire Solana ecosystem. And then obviously with the revenue models of Zeus ZPL assets, which is token extension models, the more transaction that is being on chain, the more revenue we earn in Sol, and the more we kick it back to Zeus node itself too. So right now there are already 6 teams that want to build on top of ZPO. They want to build like a multi-chain launchpad. I'm not sure a lot of you guys have experience using Ordinal Unisats wallet to purchase Ordinal and Sats. It takes about 30 to 40 minutes. Yeah. And not just that, right? You're pretty much paying inscriptions, tokens on a Bitcoin block that has no utilities, that has no programmable actions. You can do governance on top of it. But why can't we migrate these to Solana? I think that could be interesting moving forward.
Yeah. So I want to kind of go back to like the technical layer of how Zeus actually operates. So you mentioned there's kind of this node coordination network that's running on top of Solana. But if I'm taking something like Bitcoin, right? Walk me through like what is the journey of me taking, from a technical perspective, me taking a Bitcoin that's on the Bitcoin network and generating something I can use in Solana DeFi via Zeus.
So Apollo as a first step, building on top of ZPL. So pretty much Apollo and the mission of Apollo is onboarding millions of Bitcoins to Solana. And what it does, Apollo leverage the communication portal between Bitcoin and Solana, using Solana to validate whatever happens on the Bitcoin ends. Mm-hmm. So which means to walk through, you simply deposit your Bitcoins into the address that is being provided by Apollo, and it will provide you another version of a ZPU asset, which is called ZBTC on Solana end. And your BTC is simply guarded by Zeus nodes. No one has a right to take whatever the BTC that's depositing in the address, and then you can use ZBTC deposit into this, for example, like Caminos or any structured products or bar lendings. I think these are the type of DeFi action that Bitcoin institutions are looking for. Even just 1% of yield sustainably, that is huge for miners.
So where, the classic problem with every time you're trying to move a Bitcoin off of the Bitcoin network is someone or something has to custody it. And because there's no smart contract programming language on Bitcoin, you can't do what you typically do on a network like Solana or Ethereum, where, you wrap it in a smart contract program that is open source and audited and, like battle tested from that perspective. So what does the actual like custody look like on this case? Are you basically taking that Bitcoin seed phrase for that address and like breaking it up and MPCing it throughout the nodes, or how is the actual Bitcoin secured?
So basically, we use Taproot. So you deposit into a Taproot address for your Bitcoins, and it sends signals to our Zeus nodes. And then each of the Zeus nodes, this is 6 Zeus nodes, will divide their private keys and then use NPC to mix up the private keys. So no one knows on chains which nodes are actually holding the key to transacts. And then pretty much all of these 6 nodes have to be operated at the same time to really ensure the transaction from the Taproot address are being validated on SVN levels. So in the short term, for non-technical people, we're using Solana to validate whatever happens on the Bitcoin side. And once Solana validated on our end by Zeus nodes, and then we release the token, which is called ZBTC on the Solana end, and you have that ZPO asset on your wallet.
Nice. And so if I want to go the other way, if I've bought ZBTC on Solana and I say, I want to deposit it into my Bitcoin address, how does that like redemption flow work?
So once you get ZBTC, you can also withdraw from Apollos. So pretty much the amount of ZBTC will not inflate unless there are more BTC deposited into.
Totally.
And if there's strong demand of ZBTC, there's going to be a kinship premium in some perspective. If the Solana ZBTC on Solana side is higher priced than actually BTC, there's going to be arbitrage opportunities. And I believe that more people will actually want to deposit BTC into ZBTC and sell on Solana. And once you hit that like equilibrium levels, the price will adjust it to a market level as well. And obviously, there's no work on Bitcoins. And I think with this way, if more demands will cause more supply, and eventually if you meet the equilibrium levels for the price itself.
Yeah, totally. So, but if I want to like unwrap, for lack of a better term, and get I've like, so for example, like with Thesis or Threshold, the redemption arc is on Solana. You have to bridge it to Ethereum, and then you can talk to the Thesis network, and you can get BTC back on the other end. How does that work with Zeus? Or, maybe for Litecoin completely different.
Yeah. Like honestly, just withdraw your ZBTC to BTC address.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna ask you to provide your BTC address, and within 12 hours, you're gonna get your BTCs on theirs.
So is that like a human in the loop, or how is that kind of managed for that redemption?
It's not a program levels, because we have like co-reserve, hard reserve on the balance sheets. So we want to ensure that not everyone is going to reserve and then does malicious attack at one time. So there's going to be co-reserves. For example, 60% of BTCs is going to be hot wallets, 40% is going to be on cold wallets as well. And everything is done by on the program side as well.
Yeah. So like, walk me through kind of how that coordination works. So you mentioned that like you guys are using Taproot addresses, and so the Zeus nodes are controlling the MPC. How do they reassemble the key to then like withdraw Bitcoin from that Taproot address? Like when someone requests, let's say there's like, 1,000 Bitcoin in this particular address, and, I want to get one out or something like that.
So, when you get extra Bitcoins, ZBTC on a Solana side, somebody's losing it.
Yeah.
Like that's how it works. And when you want to withdraw through Apollos, which is the first tap building on top of ZPL, you're going to have to provide your Bitcoin address. And then once Solana, it's pretty much like a lock and min mechanism. So you release your ZBTC, and then one of the address for the co-reserves is going to release to a hot address. And then you're going to get your Bitcoins on a provided address. And this way has no censorships. There's no third party. Everything's done by procedures and the programmable ways per se.
Nice. And so how do you kind of view the future of kind of a Bitcoin Solana communication layer? Like the first use here is sort of not exactly bridging, but something similar to bridging or synthetic asset creation with a one-to-one backed asset. What are the other applications you see for communications layers between Solana and networks like Bitcoin?
I think Apollo is going to demonstrate the potential of having layer 1.5 between Bitcoin and Solana. Solana can make Bitcoin programmable. With the potential of SVNs. And obviously, Apollo is the first restaking of a big BTC question, restaking BTCs from BTC to Solana. And I think the more use cases that we're seeing, that people want to collateralize Bitcoin, issue stable coins on Solana as well. That could be game changer as well. If DAI could work out with EVNs, why can't we do decentralized algorithmic stable coins on Solana that's being collateral by Bitcoins? Could also work very well as well. And more perspective is that there are more than 50,000+ of collection of order nodes. There are lack of utilities, no governance, no way to really propel the community moving forward, with a lot of consensus and decisions. But with Zeus, you can really build a synthetic DAO tokens from order node to ZPL standards, and then people can really use relents on Solana, votings, a lot of cool things you can do with that. And then also, by the way, Launchpad as well, right? I think, as a matter of fact, if you want to use Unisats, a lot of Bitcoin wallets to purchase sats or rooms, a lot of all these like encrypted letters, it takes forever, and the user experience are pretty terrible actually. So if we can use Solana, deposit your SOL to buy whatever on the Bitcoin ends, that could be interesting models as well.
Yeah. So I want to kind of go back to one piece, which is you mentioned this is all built using Solana as a coordination layer. Why did you guys decide to make that decision, and sort of what was that process like? What else did you evaluate for architecture decisions?
Yeah, I think frankly speaking, we've been building on Solana since late 2019, early 2020. Probably one of the earliest Asian developers in Asia that are being advocating Solana since day one. You know, you can't always pick a better chains. Obviously, there's a reason why we stay Solana for the last almost 5 years already. Is that every year there's always better chain with faster TPS, but the chain that has been constantly going through stress tests, constantly going through battles, and it has the best social economics, social communities. I think that those are the chains that you want to bid on, and then we have proven that our thesis were right from the early this years. The on-chain usage for Solana and then daily active wallet address, it's been phenomenal in one aspect. And why make Solana and Bitcoin together? I think that's very interesting models. A lot of people ask me, Justin, why do you think of this first place? I think if there has to be one layer that has to be interact with Solana, it has to be Solana. With Bitcoin, it has to be Solana. Ethereum had their own chains last cycles. WBTCs, Rain BTC, all these like so-called like communication there. They were trying to do a similar what Solana does. They couldn't pull it off because layer 2. It wasn't because of the design of layer 1 Ethereum. It was because of competition of layer 2 due to high costs and low speeds. And if you have two chains that are low speed trying to work with each other, it doesn't make sense in many aspects, right? So I think Solana has proven low cost, high speeds. It's actually buildable and much easier to build compared to before. And not to mention user acquisitions. I think a lot of people think that I can be the first product in this chains and I have the market shares, but it doesn't work that way.
Everyone tries to run the Lido playbook. Yeah.
Exactly. Why would you want to build on anything on top of besides iOS and Androids right now? It doesn't make sense to me at all. So for me, Android is Ethereum, iOS is Solana. If we can make iOS work with Bitcoins, which is on top liquidities, we have a strong edge right over here. And it's not just that, right? Like I mentioned, there are 6 projects want to build on top of ZPL. These projects are coming from Bitcoin communities. Right. It's not coming from Solana. They have enough frustrations from so-called Bitcoin layer 2, too much promising. And then people don't realize that it's actually not that easy to build a layer.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things people always overestimate or underestimate. They think, oh, we'll just build a management layer on top of this thing. And other than Base, very few have actually managed to build a strong, compelling one, which I think is very, very interesting. Like the problems of building a system that's dependent on another system are pretty massive. Not to say it can't be done, but it's just it's a hard process to get right.
I agree. I mean, there's always better chains out there every year. Obviously, it's going to come out like faster TPS, faster this, secure that. But who's actually using it? Like, people actually use it?
So I want to take a little bit of a turn here. You guys have a kind of interesting model, and correct me if I'm understanding this right or wrong, but of like a verifiable program library on Zeus. How does that work, and what's the sort of what's the reason for needing like a program registry there?
Basically, how we differentiate us with a lot of so-called question layers out there is that, first of all, we are not layers. We're layer 1.5. So we pretty much opens another doors for Solana to really interact with external blockchains interchangeably and permissionless ways to do that. Second, but most importantly, we want to advocate future developers and founders to build the next generation of cross-chain products. And I'm still a believer the future should be monolithic in a way that future should be multi-chain, cross-chains in many aspects. If SVN is really propelling the cycles and really helping a lot of users and founders to build next generation Web3 apps, why can't we enable this to external blockchains? A lot of these UTXO chains out there, they are untapped liquidity, in my opinion. They're sitting at around 10 billion to 50 billion, 100 billion, like Solana, Bitcoin liquidity out there. They're waiting for us to really develop the next generation of the dApps to really propel moving forward. So I just spoke to Litecoin miners 3 days ago, actually. They're very excited. They're very excited. First of all, they can be programmable first ever. I mean, there were chains out there that wanted to try it. I also spoke to one of the biggest miners for Dogecoin as well. They want to make that happen as well. Why can't Dogecoin work with Solana? It could be a lot of interesting model moving forward as well, right? So
do you sort of see a lot of these networks then as Because Doge, there have been proposals floating around for Doge to migrate to proof of stake for a long time. And in that migration, there's always kind of been an assumed, oh, well, we could easily add some form of light compute layer on top of on that as well. Do you sort of see that as like maybe not gaining as much traction, and instead they're looking at, oh, what if we could just bring the Doge asset class to other networks?
Yeah. Great question. First of all, I mean, I'm pretty sure Ethereum Foundation spent probably $500 million on from migrating POW POS at least for all the last 4 years. And in terms of Doge, if you go to the GitHub to see their commitments, it's not even close to Ethereum, obviously. And you know, if that doesn't work, why can't we Solana help? And then, frankly, I spoke to 2 Dogecoin miners. They're very optimistic about this kind of collaborations, right? They have so much Doge sitting there, mostly into institutions' wallets, collateral, getting more stable coins, or just sitting in F2 pools, lending their Doge for whatever people want to borrow against you. So, you know, if there are innovations between Doge and the actual Dogecoin that could be potentially earning you on Solana, or if multiple question dApps, or even Caminos, even earning yields from drifts, right? Traded Dogecoins, native Dogecoin on Solana, that could be interesting as well.
Yeah. So what do you kind of see as like the relevancy for these proof of work assets over the long term? Like, I think the Bitcoin pitch is fairly well established at this point. You know, like the most secure form of digital asset you can get is Bitcoin, right? There's a whole narrative around that structure. But I think if you start looking at like the other proof of work assets, like that thesis, you know, gets a little bit shakier because, you know, there's only one gold, right? And maybe there's 2 golds now. There's Bitcoin as well. But like people don't have that same sort of like fervor for silver or platinum or any of the other rare metals. There's something that's like really captured people's minds about gold. So, you know, Doge obviously has this like very big meme coin status, but like Litecoin as well. Like, where do you see kind of demand for these assets being programmable come in? Like, what is the sort of, I mean, I'm not really asking you to justify their existence, but like, you know, why are these asset classes still desirable in a proof of stake world?
Yeah. Obviously, POW came first, then POS, and then migration of POW from POS for Ethereum is obviously due to scalability and the speed of chain itself. Does miner really want that happens? You know, I spoke to a lot of OG miners for Ethereum. A lot of them have moved to AGI marketplace, which is AI computing powers.
Interesting.
But, you know, I think a lot of it are due to speed of the chain itself and then the need for this to chain overall. And then, am I a fan of POW? I'm actually a fan of POW. I think it's probably the most decentralized consensus out there that could be fairly distributed. 2 people could really mine the coins with their own laptop and computers for the early days. And then if you have to purchase mining machines right now, it's probably going to cost you like a fortune right now for a lot of retails. But back in the days, it was fairly distributed. So do I think POW is going to dry down or go with faded? I don't think so. I actually seen a couple of POW chains out there are emerging right now with a lot of speed improvements or programmable actions. Casper, so-called a lot of POW chains, even Filecoins are from the early days as well. So, yeah, like, you know, it's probably one of the best way to fairly distribute it, not just from a coin perspective, but also from a network perspective as well. And yeah, like there's always going to be a battle between POW and POS without questions, like in my takes. And then obviously it's probably coming from the people that with their own intentions and benefits. So, but it's good for industry, right? There's always debates. There's always discussions.
Definitely. So you mentioned Apollo is the first application that's been built on top of Zeus. Is there anything else you can tell us about what's getting built now? And also for developers who are maybe interested in learning more and digging into the code and figuring out what they could build on the network, where can they go to get started?
Yeah, for sure. So we are going through Muse's testnet right now. It's the last test step before we actually enable Zeus node opening on the mainnet betas. We are targeting mainnet betas hopefully around breakpoint time. So we can release around Bitcoin for mini betas, and then people can really leverage and stake their tokens and delegate it into the nodes, and together protect the Zeus network together. And when that happens, the Bitcoin can really come into Solana in the permission matter through Apollos. And Apollo is the first steps. And we also want to do Apollo token with points. It could be no VC back, and actually the token that has thousands of Bitcoins behind the debt itself. So a lot of ways we can do it. And then we also want to host the first ever Zeus hackathon around the quarter of this year, late this year, with Taipei Hacker House, which is around December. I think Solana is also the biggest sponsor at that time as well. And and then our goal is to be one of the tracks for next year for Solana hackathons. I still think that Solana Layer 1 SVN could be probably the only solution enabling Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dogecoin, any UTXO chains out there coming to Solana. And when that happens, we have a strong edge to compete with Ethereum TVL, in my perspective.
Very cool. Well, Justin, thank you for joining us today on Validated.
Thank you, guys. It's been my pleasure.